Welcome back to Face to Face. My guest is Arundhati Roy. Arundhati, we paused at the end of part one at that very moment when you're going to win the Booker Prize. On that particular moment when the announcement was happening, I gather you weren't even in the room. Is that right?
That's right, yeah. I was out. I'd gone, I'd gone to the loo and someone was like banging on the door saying, they're announcing it, get out of there.
What took you to the loo? Were you nervous?
No, I wasn't. I was nervous, but that's not what took me to the loo. I have to say that, I didn't enjoy the episode. I enjoyed, of course I enjoyed the fact that I won the Booker Prize, but while it was happening, there was something quite humiliating about the whole thing.
Being in competition.
Being in competition, I wrote this book for Esther Pwin and Rahel and Amu, and, suddenly it was like I didn't want that prize, but I had started wanting it because of the kind of pressures that are being put on you.
So you were beginning to become a little angry with yourself as well, suddenly.
Yeah, I was sad that I wanted to win it, I thought I was bigger than that.
Okay, tell me, today you are probably one of India's best-known authors, certainly one of the most widely read. What does your writing mean to you? Does it define you?
Let's say that it's there's nothing that pleases me more than a beautiful sentence. I could go out and come home carrying a sentence in my head like other people bring shopping in. So it is something that satisfies me, because I've said this before, but that language is the skin on my thought. It's the way I think, and it's a great privilege to be given that space to think, and that I feel is the real privilege that I have earned. The
language and the thought are very clear and very obvious in The God of Small Things. But what about some of your activist writing? I take it that's not spontaneous. That doesn't just come into your head. That's researched and sweated over.
Yeah, well, also The God of Small Things wasn't spontaneous. It's a very crafted novel. The language is spontaneous, but when I say language,
the structure is not.
Yeah, the structure is not. In the end of Imagination, it was a moral position. It was my moral position on the nuclear tests. In The Greater Common Good, instinct took me to the Narmada Valley, but I was very aware that this is a subject one needs to learn about before you write about it.
Let's talk a little about those two essays. In The End of Imagination, people say that her heart's in the right place, her motivations are pure, but she doesn't know what she's talking about.
Yeah, well, that's, how do you argue with a moral position? As far as I'm concerned, I don't mind if every country in the world had a nuclear bomb. I'm not talking about defense strategy. So if you want to talk about it in those terms, you can say she doesn't know what she's talking about. But I'm a unilateralist on that score. In the Narmada Valley, it's a different thing. You can't take a moral position on a big dam. You have to, and I didn't have a moral position. I was curious about it.
Let me push this a little. For instance, let's go back to The End of Imagination, the essay on the bomb. People say that it was full of passion and emotion, but lacking in analytical content. Like candy floss, it tantalized only to disappoint.
Well, I think people are very scared of passion and emotion, It's like something that people don't want to address. But I can't argue such a general point. Somebody just dismisses you like, oh, it's full of emotion. But, as if there's something criminal about emotion. And this is something that's happening more and more,
And you, in fact, were deliberately making an emotional statement.
Of course.
That was the point of it.
I believe in emotion. I'm so sad that people are so suspicious of emotion. Even when and in a way I understand it. When you live in this country, you have to deaden your emotion to carry on living, to carry on dealing with what you see on the street.
Okay, let's switch to the other essay, because there it wasn't emotion that people criticized. There it's the fact that you've taken your critique too far and lost credibility. For instance, you write, people stop growing things they can afford to eat and start growing things they can only afford to sell. By linking themselves to the market, they lose control over their lives, and then later on you say they get yoked to the whims of a world they know nothing about. It sounds almost as if you're glorifying some sort of concept of a noble savage, that you're worshipping an Arcadian ignorance without accepting or admitting that it's backward, it's poor, it's impoverished, it's self-denying.
Let me say this, that when I went to the valley, I went to these villages, I have no doubt in my mind, and nobody should have any doubt in their minds, that these are very poor people that are being displaced. You know, but this idea that it's this noble savage, particularly this term, it is offensive, you know, to me, because it's the sort of government line that you're actually trying to say that we are displacing people for their own good, you know, that we're taking them away and giving them development. Now this is the most, I mean, it's insulting.
It's Big Brother. We know better for them than they know for themselves.
I mean, look at this. Here you're talking about these villages like Neem Gawan and Jalsindi. Go there and see. You know, these are poor people, but they are self-sufficient. You know, they have fish.
But you see, your argument doesn't...
Let me just finish. And when you take them away from that and dump them somewhere else, smash their community links, you know, they have no land, you give them some money, and you call this development. If they were so interested in development or developing these people, why for the last 50 years was there not a single road, not a single school, not a single well?
But you see, Arundhati, that's a very fair point that many would accept, but then you go further, and that's when the danger comes. You go on to argue that dams per se are a threat to democracy, and that's the point at which people say she's exaggerating.
Okay, I'll tell you what I meant by that. That we have 3,600 big dams in India. We're the third biggest dam builders. And what I mean when I say I don't say that they're a threat to democracy, but what I say is that what these dams have done is to take natural resources away from the countryside to the cities. So yes, they produced electricity, but 80% of rural households have no electricity. 250 million have no drinking water. 350 million live below the poverty line.
Do you think you overstated your case? Do you think you used language that have misled people?
No.
No?
I stand by every single thing I said in this. Every single thing.
And
I only want to say that, you know, it's the saddest thing about this debate is there comes a point at which argument stops and untruths begin to filter in, you know. And that's why I wish
your critics are hitting you back with untruth, you're saying?
Yeah, with untruth.
Is there not a danger here that the response to Arundhati, the activist, could begin to affect the respect, perhaps even the admiration for Arundhati, the author? Doesn't that worry you?
It doesn't worry me, because this is not about Arundhati, you know. This is not about me at all. I'm not playing for, you know, brownie points here.
You're part of a bigger cause.
It's like I'm not, you know, I'm not interested in a character certificate from people telling me what I should write, what I shouldn't, who respects me, who doesn't. You know, I've got the T-shirt. I got everything that I could have possibly wanted.
You're saying this is me, accept me as I am.
No,
because I'm not going to change to please you.
Or don't. I mean, it's not about my soliciting any kind of public support. I mean, you know, of myself. I am somebody who wants to say what I want to say, you know, and I'm willing for people to argue with me, but not, you know, try and give me marks about what
Arundhati, long may you continue to say what you say and say it as well as you do. Thank you very much for coming to the studio.